Hi there, and welcome to Let's Slow Down, a podcast for all of you who feel tired and stressed from this overwhelming world. Here we'll have fun, inspiring conversations about living life on our own terms and explore ways to ease the pace of our modern world, because life really is good when you're relaxed enough to be present for it. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Stolting, and I welcome you to this space where I hope to inspire you to slow down, because life is too short to let it go by in a blur. So take a deep breath, relax, and enjoy the show.
Today's guest is Leigh Burgess, keynote speaker, podcast host, innovative strategist, and creator of the Bold framework. After 20 years in healthcare and business, Leigh went on her own to build Bold Industries Group, an organization that encompasses her passion for tackling big challenges that, when solved, make the world a better place. Her mission is to help leaders solve problems for good. Leigh is a regular contributor to Forbes and Entrepreneur. She was honored as one of Success Magazine's 125 leaders making a difference and is currently nominated for Success's 50 Women of Influence. She also hosts her own podcast called The Bold Lounge. Welcome to Let's Slow Down, Leigh.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you today. Before we get into it, let's hear a little bit about your story. How did you go from healthcare and business to living and teaching others to live a bold life?
Sure, absolutely. So I think I've been bold my whole life. I just didn't really name it that. And I would, with my team, off and on say, we're going to take a big swing of bold here. And what that meant to be is we're going to try something that may succeed or fail. And if it fails, we're going to learn from it, and we're going to possibly even predict what could happen. And so I think I've been taking big swings of bold in corporate for a very long time. I got to a point in 2020 where it was a very hard time for the entire world at that space and place. But I got to a point of just complete burnout. And I don't think we were talking about it as much, but I think 2020 was an awakening for a lot of people about what they accept or what they won't accept. And I had to choose me, choose my family. And I quit my job without having a job and with no plan. And I don't recommend this for everyone. It just got to a point where I knew I needed to make a change. 2 hours of sleep, very, very bad habits in the sense of eating and moving, and just wasn't myself and really needed to claim me back. And the only way to do it at that point, because it had just gone on so long, was to quit. And what was interesting about that time was that I started to focus on me, my wellness, and my mindset, and be strategic and think about how I can do what I want to do. And for the first time, I was like, oh, I could be anything I want to be, and that was at 48. I was thinking like that. And for me, it wasn't jumping right back into another job. I had to use some of our savings and some of my retirement because I bootstrapped my company, but that was a choice I made, and one I made intentionally because I knew that it just wasn't going to be go back and get another job or start out on your own. But I think it was the first time that I realized I could be an entrepreneur. I could run my own business. And I really just started getting very creative, I think, because my mind wasn't full of so many other things. And I was actually healing myself by giving myself a little bit of space and grace for a while, got my own coach. But I was doing things in parallel. I was thinking about what my services would be, what I was good at, what I wanted to explore and get curious about. For a little while, I thought I was going to be an interior designer because I love to design and create space that feels good. And that was about a month. So I realized I couldn't make a living off of it quickly. And I needed to do that. So I think it was a really interesting time to explore, be curious, and to build, and at the same time also take care of myself.
And so it's such an interesting story that I think resonates with so many people. I know it resonates with me, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners, as a lot of us do hit that point. And I think it is especially in that midlife 40s range where we kind of realize for a lot of us, we've been going forever, and it's not really sustainable long term or any longer. And then 2020 was obviously such a pivotal moment in history and in all of our lives. It's almost going to be like looking back the before and the after.
Yeah.
And I love that you said you chose you. You had to make a decision. You chose you. Talk about being bold and brave. I mean, leaving without another job sitter and really, yeah, so scary and also so courageous. And I love that you said I can be anything I want to be because always talking about that. Like we hear that when we're growing up and then we hit at a point as we're like adulting and that goes away because then it's all about being practical and pushing to that next level or whatever.
Job, right? Getting that
Mhm.
promotion, getting that raise, there was certainly in a lot of industries, but in mine, there was a, you do this, you have this experience, you perform, do a good job, and you can then move up, right? So I got into that move up, do a good job, move up, do a good job. That was what I was driven by. And so therefore, I really didn't think there was anything else that I should be doing, right? Like my goal is to keep going, get to the top. But, like,
Yeah.
for me, that there was never enough. Like, I'd get to the top. I was the chief in my early 40s in the C-suite, which is wonderful. A lot of hard work, a lot getting to that point, but it was like, then what? And too young to stop. Like, I just don't wanna, like, wait 15 years to retire or 20 whatever years to retire. Like, I wanna keep going, keep learning, keep moving. And I think it was just an interesting way of thinking for that time. And there's this interesting happiness curve research, and I'm not the researcher to really talk about it, but somewhere around 47 and 48 is one of our lowest times of being happy. And well, they call it the midlife crisis, but I really think it's an awakening. It's awakening of like, I won't put up with that anymore. I don't think I was thinking, oh, I'm 48 and I'm midlife or anything like that. I think I was thinking life is too short, which I always knew. But I think I was just at a point where I was like, I've got to do something about it. And I've got to do it now. And I really need to have the intention to be whatever I want to be at this point because life's just too short.
Yes, for sure. And again, I love how you just turned it right there. Your perspective is fantastic. It's absolutely so positive and refreshing. You talked about learning from our failures, always doing that when you were younger as a leader. And same with this, like saying, no, this is an awakening and I'm just going to learn from what I've done so far and redirect to move forward to get where I want to go, which we talk a lot on this show about living an intentional life. And that to me, you're embodying it perfectly. And it's such a process, right? We'll never really get there. Even with those steps that you had in the corporate world, we'll always keep going. It's always a
Yeah.
journey.
For some
So
reason, I felt like I don't know why I thought this, but looking back, you think you realize things, but I don't know why I thought there was like the finite goal. There was this place to be. There was once I get there, like everything will be great and I'll be so happy all the time. And it wasn't true. That's the thing that I learned is like being happy today, where I am, what I'm doing, who I'm around, who I am. That's the most important thing. It isn't trying to get somewhere so you get happy. It's like being happy in your own skin today. And I do think that's intentional. I do think it's a choice people need to make that sometimes is a scary choice. It's sometimes a choice that means they have to deal with things. They have to look inside themselves. They have to look at their beliefs. The BOLD framework is where I created the acronym is Believe, Own, Learn, Design. And that's really where I jumped into looking at my own beliefs around myself. I had this huge challenge of being responsible. I felt like I was responsible for everything, even when it wasn't mine to be responsible for, which I think led to a lot of my burnout. I had to really dig into that and then own it, like own my future. Things aren't happening to me. I'm not a victim. No one's coming to save me. Like I've got to get to it. I'm a pretty take ownership type of person, but I think when it was coming to my career and our livelihood and those sort of things, I felt like it was in someone else's hands, right? And I think I needed to own it and then learn from everything that I've done, succeeded and failed and in between, and then get to work designing that life that I wanted to live that was most aligned with my passion and purpose. And so that's really the BOLD framework really came out of that time of healing, nurturing, and creating that I was doing after I left.
how did you start in the beginning? You created this whole framework and you've obviously made so much of that experience and learned so much and are now helping others with it. But when in the thick of it, how did you get out of it? How did you get out of it to the point where you could do these positive things?
Yeah. I think it was making the choice to leave, which was very frightening, scary moment in the sense of how am I going to help support my family? But at the same time, it was equally freeing. And I think parts of my brain that had just been asleep or not allowed to really come out started to come out. So I gave my notice. And by the time my last day, so I gave the normal 1 month notice. By the time I was done walking out my last day, I was incorporated. And so but I wasn't going to jump right in, but I knew where I was going to go next. And sometimes just knowing where you're going to go next is best. Like, you don't have to know steps 1 through 10, which I had lived most of my life, like plan A through Z. You just need to know the next step. And so for me, it was really going, okay, now that I have that, what are we going to do next? And I think I realized, as I mentioned, that I couldn't just jump into being a consultant or being a coach or doing events or doing any of the things I do now. And some of the things I do now, I never even had on my vision board or never imagined. Like, I never imagined I'd have a membership or do retreats or have a podcast. That wasn't even on there. Those things came to me because they were actually meant for me. And I think that's something that we've heard the quote, what's meant for you won't miss you. And I think it was me just kind of giving in a bit and stop trying to structure and plan every single step when all I needed to do is what is the next step? And I think that's how I did it, because there is no rule book. There is no personal docent that's going to walk you through that. Now, there's a lot of great coaches, a lot of guides of how to start a business and those types of things, but it's personal and it's unique and your journey is yours. And so mine was different, what I wanted to do or what I wanted to try. So really, I just started planning what the next step was and then the next step after that. And it just started to build and really took off in the beginning of 21, because that's when I knew I needed to heal, plan, get coached myself, kind of get out of some of the funk I was in. And I did that through the fall and early winter and then kicked it off in 21 with a runway. Like, I had a very short runway at that point. I did take time for myself because I think that was so important. Even though it was very precious time, I think it was time well spent.
Yeah. It's almost like you couldn't afford not to take that time.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Exactly. I think that's the thing with burnout. Like, you can think you're out of it and you're not. I feel like I got out of it, but I would say last December, I was seeing the signs of it again, even as an entrepreneur. So I had to be very, very thoughtful about myself and how I was working and what I was doing, because it doesn't mean because you get out of it that you're not going to fall back into it. And I think that's what's nice about the BOLD framework, because you might just go back and visit beliefs or ownership or learning. You may go in and out of the framework, but it's not a one and done type of thing. You constantly managing yourself, I think, in life, because life goes fast. There's lots happening. My challenge was a positive challenge, which was scaling faster than I expected, but it still is unhealthy. So I think you really need to manage yourself and be aware of the signs when they come back. And that was really important for me.
I think paying attention as we get too busy, like we don't pay attention to that kind of stuff, even though our
Yeah.
body is telling us, it's screaming at us to pump the brakes or go a different direction or just take a rest. And
Leave the house. I mean, my indicator was, it was like a Friday, and I was like, have I left the house? And I literally meant, did I step outside the door to the backyard or the front yard at all? And I had not. And so it was like, that's a problem, right? So because I was working too late in the winter time in New England is like crazy. It's dark at 4 and it's a very, very winter like. So you kind of get internal anyway. But it was like, that is a sign when I was working longer days, and I definitely wasn't slowing down. I was speeding up. And usually that time of the year, there's a lot of slowdown. But in my mind, I was like, well, everyone else is slowing down. I'm going to speed up, because then I have an edge, or I'm ahead versus being behind. And that was really a silly way to think. It wasn't healthy.
but you caught yourself. And I think that's the biggest difference. Maybe old you wouldn't have caught yourself so quickly.
Exactly.
And
Old me would have
yeah.
worked all the way through Christmas and to New Year's, would have maybe taken 2 days off. And yeah, that was the old me. And at that time, like, it was like, whoa, like, that's it. We're shutting it down. We're going to cancel any meetings I had. And I ended up taking 2 full weeks off. And that was really, and that doesn't solve or do anything like instantaneously. But for me, it was like, I needed to take myself out of this routine I had gotten myself in and move myself into another routine. And that was my kind of identifying the signs again and then seeing that I could do something about it much quicker and not have to get to that place that I was in 2020.
Sure. And I'll bet you taking that 2 weeks off, I'm sure you weren't behind when you came back. First of all, a lot of the world does take a break around that time.
Yeah, exactly. Like everyone takes a break for a reason, and it is a nice time because there is a lot of, I think, people slowing down, which I think is not a bad thing. I think sometimes in the business world, you think that, oh, you're slowed down, you have a disadvantage, you aren't getting ahead, you're behind, and I think that had been ingrained in me for a really long time, and I think I needed to kind of flip the script on that. It's like, no, actually, if you're rested and you've been with your family and friends, you have more energy. And I actually think, and there's probably research on this, but when you have those moments of not emails and calls and Zooms and all that coming at you, you can actually think differently and ideas really flow, I think, more readily in that space. And so I had some great ideas, some things that we would do. Doesn't mean I don't think about work off and on or anything like that, but it's like a space to not have this regimented routine of meetings, clients, presentations, all that jazz, things that we do. It just gets you into a different space. And I think you think differently in that space as well.
Totally agree. And I'm really trying to highlight the message that rest is productive. It can be very productive,
100%. Yeah.
which is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And we don't, our society doesn't look at it like
We
that.
don't believe
Oh,
it for some reason. We don't believe it. But, take that time. Like, take a long, someone's like, well, I can't take 2 weeks off. And I get that. I never did when I was in the corporate world. Like, I would take a week off and it would take me till, if we left, Friday was my last day and I had the following week off, it would take me till Wednesday to chill out, to get off my email, to hide my phone or whatever I needed to do for myself. And then I'd have 2 days before we left. And it was just such a bummer for me because it's like I never really felt like I had that downtime. So one of the things we do now is like it's quarterly. We go to the beach, quarterly beach trips. We never go. And again, someone could say, well, I can't do this. But I mean, I'm making a choice. I'm investing. I'm working hard. So like these are the things that I do. We go for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. And it's just very freeing, and we actually call it some of our most creative time when we're together and doing our thing. But you can just take a long weekend. Just take a Friday and a Monday, and then you have 4 days, right? Just doing that, and you've only taken 2 days off, and disconnect. Put your phone in the drawer, whatever you need to do. Like I had to do that to manage myself. Don't take your laptop. Get off of social media. And these are the things that it's like, wow, like at first for me, when I do those types of things, I'm a little bit worried, honestly, because I don't want to let anybody down. I don't want to not get back to someone, but everything's okay. Like I'm not a surgeon. Like I'm not that type of person that you got to be able to get to me or someone might get hurt or something like that. So I realize that I can take a break and I'm better for it when I do that. So just taking even that extended long weekend can be as a start, right? Thinking of your next step for slowing down and just getting off of your devices and those types of things. Because sometimes you don't know what to do then. And that was definitely something I ran into is like, what do I do for fun? And when you ask,
now what?
you ask that question to someone and they should be able to answer it. Like I could not answer it. And it's like, okay, well, I work really hard and I really like my team and we do great stuff. And no, like outside of your job. And it was like silence. So like really figuring out what do you do when you don't have your phone and your email and your team. And if you have that, that's wonderful. You just do more of that. I mean, if you can't define it, you need to start finding what is something that you like to do. Is it pickleball? Is it reading? Is it kayaking? Is it taking long walks? Is it training your dog for agility? I don't know. It could be any of these things you could get curious about or do or try and just think about the next step to learning more about it and doing that.
Yeah, that's another thing as adults. We don't let ourselves have that hobby or that fun time anymore because we're so busy doing our thing and being responsible. But that is such a huge piece of it. And having that joy and also remembering and reconnecting what brings me joy and what is fun for me. Like you said, at first you weren't sure. And I've been there too. Like, wait,
I had
what?
no
I
idea.
have time? Yeah. at times myself, what am I going to do? I have no idea. I have no idea.
Yeah. I liked
And,
soccer, but I hadn't played it, right? Like, okay, like that doesn't count.
yeah, and well, that's the thing. I feel like we forget. We think back to when we were younger and had the time and did those things more. We
Yeah.
still think like those are our fun things, but it changes. It changes as we change. So getting back to that, I think is so important. I mean, tapping into that creativity and it helps us tap into that creativity. And I just think that we are better off for it. And the people around us are better off for it because we are like, we're shining brighter and we're sharing our gifts more because we're tapping into that. We're
And
giving
you're
ourselves
modeling,
that,
right? You're
yeah.
modeling for your family, your friends. I have a daughter, so like just modeling for how you handle things. And I think not that I set a bad example, like I really worked hard and did what I did and succeeded at levels I never thought possible, but it was at a cost. And I didn't want to pay that cost anymore, which was my relationships, my health, my mental health, my emotional health, like all the spiritual health, all the different types of health that you can have. And I was tired of paying that toll. And I think I needed to choose me. And that's why I say that, because by choosing myself, which people could say, oh, that was selfish or this or that. If I'm not taking care of myself, like then my family, it ripples. And I think that's really, really important to also see is like your actions are not just in a jar and not affecting or not impacting other people around you. They certainly are.
For sure. It's so important. So you've taken all of this life experience and you've put it into a book, which is so exciting.
Yep.
Let's hear about it. Be bold today.
Yeah. So the reason I wrote the book was really to scale the message of possibility and that people could, I think I've realized through my podcast and through my coaching and just the interactions with my bold community is that sometimes people don't even realize they're already bold, right? They don't even know that they've been making bold moves or standing up for the right things, the right people all their life. And I think I wanted people to realize one, they probably already had some boldness within them. They just needed it freed and kind of let it out and able to run a bit more. And then I also wanted to demystify what bold is about because bold can get a bad rap sometimes. And then finally being able to go through the framework. So it really talks about what bold means. It walks through the demystification. There's 5 key myths that we talk about. And then going through the framework itself and going with resources and activities for you to really take yourself through the framework and design and create that blueprint for what's next for you. Exactly what I said. Like you just need to know the what's next. You don't have to know every single step. I think sometimes bold people think it's very loud and big, and it can be very quiet and personal. And no one needs to know about it, and you don't have to post about it. And some of my boldest moments are those types of moments. So I talk about that. And I talk about also, I think people think bold is reckless or full of risk. I think there's always risk inherent in change. And I think understanding that change leads to growth. And I think having that growth mindset is really, really important. So I talk about the connections between change and being bold and then having agency in your life to own it.
My gosh, I love it. I couldn't write fast enough. I feel like there's so many questions.
Pre-order
I can
the
take
book.
notes. Yeah, we can pre-order the book, guys. I'm going to have all the links in the show notes for sure. So let's go back. I have a few things. I think I remember them all. What does bold mean to you? How do you define it?
Yeah. So for me, it's really stepping forward into fear. And I don't think being bold is fearless. I think it's acting in spite of fear and really moving forward, not knowing potentially what the outcome will be, but you'll learn. And really that's what I think it's all about. And I think in that is this stepping right, left, and meaning like each step you're going to learn something, you're going to feel something, you're going to have a result or an outcome, and then working with that to take the next step. And I think that's been the most helpful for me because I really had to retrain my brain into you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to have everything figured out. And I think I had definitely gone through life thinking that I had to have it all. And it's a lot of stress and pressure on you when you think like that. And I was doing that to myself. So I needed to stop doing that. So I think that's to me what being bold is really being comfortable in the sense of when moving into something that's unknown and realizing that you're going to learn.
being like vulnerable to also let yourself be kind of comfortable in an uncomfortable situation for yourself, right? And you're pushing to that, growing to that next level. I
Right.
think that's Brene Brown talks a lot about that. And she talks about vulnerability and being brave, kind of along the same lines of what you're saying, in spite of having fear. Like there will be things that scare us, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we should shut the door and not move forward in those areas. So
Yeah.
I
100%.
love that.
I used to think that vulnerability meant weakness. And meaning not, you didn't want to show it to a lot of people. You could show it to
Right.
people close to you, which I do, but I didn't want to like put it out there. Like, oh, I failed today. I didn't do this well, or I don't know what's next, or I had a bad day. And what I realized was that that type of message of people seeing that you're real, that you're human, that you have a messiness, those are the things that actually inspire others to try to do something. Because sometimes all you see in social media is the good, the happy ending, the overnight 10-year success. So it's nice for people to really see kind of the ins and outs and the ups and downs. It's not easy. And I think at times you are certainly vulnerable for people to like criticize and say things. But I think again, that's more about them than you. And you realize that that's not something you own and that you keep doing what you're doing. And there's strength in that vulnerability, I think, that you begin to gain.
For sure. It makes you such a stronger person and a more authentic person. And I feel like it fuels happiness, productivity, just all positive things if we allow ourselves to go
There's
there.
positive in not knowing on certain times. I mean,
Sure.
you laugh at yourself, you're like, okay, well, that didn't go as planned. Or wow, like I created something and no one liked it. Or well, maybe it wasn't they didn't like it, maybe they don't understand the value of it. So like even how you talk to yourself when something doesn't work, I think there was a whole kind of re-education for me around that as well. It wasn't just it wasn't failure. It was like, wow, it didn't go like I planned. What did I maybe miss? Or maybe what can I amp up? Or what should I change? Or maybe I should just not do that. And so I think all these different options came into play versus it was just a failure.
And that's that growth mindset that you were
Yeah,
talking about, right?
exactly.
Just focusing on the next step and not having to have everything figured out. And you said you struggled with that for a long time. I certainly have as well. I feel like that is a very human quality that we all think we need to. Because and kids, I feel like we, to a point, sort of have that for a long time. Like with school, okay, well, it's the next grade or it's this next activity or whatever it is. And we get into real life and it's not so spelled out anymore. And there isn't a manual and there's no right or wrong. And we can become a little bit paralyzed if we feel like we need to have it all figured out and know every single step to get there. And a lot of times I think that stops people in their tracks. And then they don't keep going and they don't get to experience all the potential that they really may have had. Like you said, a lot of the things you're doing now, you never had imagined for yourself, right?
Yeah, never. Yeah. So I think we can fall into a routine of thinking why something's not possible versus thinking it's possible and it can work out. We think the negative, like, oh, okay, well, what's my plan B or what's the worst case scenario or what's the insert the negative that could happen, right? Instead of thinking, what if it all works out? What if it goes right? And I think sometimes we think stable is also not something that truly is stable. I mean, I thought for a very long time being in corporate world was a stable place to be. Certainly in our world we're in now, we can see that that's just because you work for someone else doesn't mean there's stability. And I'm not jamming on corporate world. I think I could go back into the corporate world if I wanted to, like, but I think I thought there was so much risk in being an entrepreneur when I think it does level out when you do your T chart of like when I work for someone else, when I work for myself. What's nice when you work for yourself is who's in charge. Like it's me. And so like if I'm unhappy, what am I doing about it? And I think that's for me was really, really important. And I think growing my team over time too, again, going back to the modeling, making sure that you're really representing and walking the talk of what you're talking about, which is that reset, that mindset, that the way that you think about yourself and your wellness connected to your strategy and your performance.
So true. So true. And even when we're talking about these issues, we do have to make sure we're practicing what we preach, right? Because we can all get caught up in all of it in
Yeah.
life. And yeah, we have to constantly be checking in. I think checking in with ourselves is so important. And I love that you take that quarterly break to the beach. You're really intentional about scheduling that and making it happen and unplugging during that time. And that is what it's all about. Like you've figured out kind of a formula to make it work for you in your life and what works.
Everyone
Yeah.
has their own formula, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's personal and just figuring it out. Like if it's like every month I'm going to take a long weekend and I'm going to take at least a Friday or Monday off and I'm going to disconnect or I'm going to try something new or I'm going to, focus in on my hobby, whatever it may be. But putting that on your calendar, I think sometimes people think, oh, it's just not possible. I can't take off or I can't be away that long, and stop talking yourself out of your life is what I would
Yes.
say to that, because I think that is just you putting something up to keep you from what you want to do or what you're meant to be. And I think that's what probably needs unpacked.
Oh, I agree so much. I love it. Love it. So maybe you can give us a few like practical ways for people listening. How can we apply the bold framework directly to our lives?
Yeah.
What are some things we can do to start?
Yeah. So the first thing I usually ask people to do is a belief audit. So starting in that quadrant of belief, which I think is the foundation for everything that you do and the actions that you take or don't take, is really thinking about currently your beliefs. Like I believe, and then start to just for a whole minute, just say I believe, and then put in the I believe I'm happy. I believe I'm smart. I believe I'm broke. I believe whatever it may be, like put it into those. Start looking at your beliefs, and then you would name them. Is this a belief that helps me, harms me, or holds me back, right? So thinking about some of those beliefs, like I believe I, need to stay at my job until I'm 65, or I believe I'm, able to, try something new. I believe I'll be the number one soccer player in the world. Whatever it may be, you're going to start thinking about, okay, like how do I then work on that belief, or how do I boost that belief? And then I think you start going into the ownership piece of, are you looking for someone else to like make this happen? Are you owning your next step? If you want to do something different, like what is the next step that you can actually do yourself without anybody giving you approval or permission or giving you the yes you can? Like you say yes you can. And then how do you move through that? And then apply it. You've learned something. You've tried, like, try that long weekend as an example. What'd you learn? Well, I have a hard time not having my phone, or I have a hard time not being on social media, or I really didn't even know what to do with myself. So I hated it. So I'm not doing it again. It's like, no, no, no. Like this is where you learn. Like, okay, if it's uncomfortable, that means something's changing. That means you're getting out of your comfort zone or your routine that you've been in that may be holding you back from what's next. And so kind of getting, I guess, comfortable with some of the friction that might happen when you're trying those things out. And then try it again. Next time, take a pack of cards or take a good book or take your fishing pole, whatever it may be on that long weekend. Just start doing something differently to learn the next thing that you can learn about yourself, and give yourself a break. I think that's what my advice would be to my younger self, is give yourself a break. It was just constant, what's next? How can you do better, get more, go to the next level? It was just a constant. And I think that I took that into my work world, and that's really what kind of, I think, got me to one of the places and burnout. It was definitely a variable to that. So give yourself a break, so that everything's not going to go perfectly or as planned, but it's going to go the way that it should.
You're so wise. You're so wise. I love all the things you said. But yes, everybody give yourself a break. And I mean, I'm saying this to myself right now too. Like we all need to hear that more often. And I talk a lot of times about how we're a better friend to others than we are to ourselves. And the advice we give to our good friend is so much kinder and gentler and more forgiving than anything we tell ourselves a lot of the time, at least
Exactly.
in my world.
Sometimes I wouldn't be friends with myself the way I talk to myself.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and that's when I was like, whoa, like, what was that? But not just letting it pass me by. Like, whoa, I need to work on that, because that I don't want that to come back up again, because that's not nice. I shouldn't talk to myself that way. And that's something I think it's gotten better certainly over the 4 years. But I think certainly at certain points, I've been pretty hard on myself and not really celebrating the wins small or big. I kind of skip by them. So I think that's really, really important in ownership too. I talk about that of what success have you had that you haven't celebrated? And I bet there's probably a list of 5 or more that you got a degree, you succeeded on a project, you worked with that person that was hard to get along with, but you made it happen. You joined a club, you wrote a page of your book, like whatever it may be. Those are successes, and they don't have to be something that is big or something that goes, like I said, on social media, some huge accomplishment. Like, make sure you're celebrating you, your wins, and the things that you're doing along the way.
Think that is so important and such a great message for everybody to think about. I had knee surgery over the winter and it was pretty severe and it was a really long, hard recovery. And in the first few weeks when I was going to physical therapy, I was just so like, I just felt really defeated. I was still in a lot of pain, couldn't even pick my leg up by myself. I needed help doing it. And I was used to being able to do a lot of physical things, be a very
Yeah.
active person. So it was really, really hard for me. And my physical therapist reminded me, like, no, you couldn't even bend it at all last week. And now look, you're bending it 30 degrees or whatever it was. He had to keep reminding me, you have to celebrate those little wins. You're making huge strides. They don't feel like that.
Yeah.
Yes, that progress. And boy, did I need to hear that. He said that to me so many times throughout the recovery. And it really, really helped. I really needed that to put things in perspective every single time because it's hard and we can apply that to everything. Like you said, working on a book. All right, maybe the book's not done, but you wrote today or you wrote a page or you wrote a paragraph, whatever it is you started. Going back to the framework that you were talking about, like owning it and what can you do and really figuring out what actions that you want to take in your life, but then also acting on them and taking those steps, whatever they are. So
Yeah.
we need to celebrate these things because that is with all these tiny little habits, little things that we do and little wins that we have that take us to the next place that is the bigger win, the goal. But also along the way, we want to enjoy these things because that is life. We have to be present. That's what I've learned in working on striving for the bigger thing. We miss so much of what's right in front of us, and we can miss so many things that bring us joy and how many beautiful blessings we have in our life that we're just like our heads down because we're plowing through that next step and we don't get the opportunity to experience all the goodness right in front of us. So these are great reminders for us today.
Yeah, definitely. I think people, like, when they hear that, like, oh, that's just so easy for them, or she's so lucky she's doing what she's doing. And I just go back to, like, I chose it. I chose the risk. I chose to do what I'm doing. I chose not to go back into corporate. And there's pros and cons to that. And I think if you don't choose yourself and choose your happiness, I just want you to rethink that, because it is not being selfish to be healthy. It is not being selfish to have positive relationships. It's not being selfish to take time for yourself. Like, you need to feed yourself and nurture yourself so that you can be there for other people, for your parents, for your children, for your friends. But if you're not there for yourself first, there's not going to be much that you can do or support others with.
That's true. Leigh, as we're winding down today, you kind of shared with us because you take your quarterly break. But what are some other your favorite ways to slow down?
I think ending at a normal time or ending early on a day. So I think certainly being an entrepreneur, your days can be long and you don't even know, because you are working on something you like oh my gosh, it's 8 o'clock and I'm just looking up. I think sometimes we'll take half days and those types of things. I think importantly, we also as a team take quarterly creative days where we'll just take a day trip somewhere. I'll learn about something, get into a certain area of the country or wherever, like, just to explore. And I think, again, just thinking about how you could be creative is important. I create a vision board every year, so I think revisiting that on a quarterly basis too. I guess the corporates is still in me very much, business wise, with the quarterly everything. But I think looking at that and realizing that you can revise your board, you can add things, you can look at what you've accomplished, you can make new goals, and I think it's not just on New Year's Eve in the beginning of a year that you can create your goals. You can do that on an ongoing, rolling basis. You can edit them too. So I think just people knowing that just what they set in stone. And I think we all know that New Year's resolutions aren't the way to actually create change. It is your habits every day and your discipline that are going to bring you towards those goals. And just like you and your PT and doing those things of being able to bend your leg a certain degree, that progress is progress. And I think acknowledging the progress that you've made. I mean, for this year, like what can you do and for the next X number of months till we turn over into 2025? You have time, but you need to start. And I think that's always important. And to begin, like get at it. And I think that's something that people, I think you can do that on a rolling basis throughout the year. And it doesn't have to be like a gloom and doom. Oh, there's only 6 months in the year or 4 months in the year or 2 months in the year. Is you have time to start, but you don't have time to waste. And I think that's just really, really important for people to realize.
Love that. I love that. You have been such a pleasure to talk to today and just so inspiring.
Well, thank you very
Really,
much.
your energy and everything that you're doing. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And just let everybody know. I'm going to link in the show notes where everyone can find you, but just let everybody know when that book is dropping.
No, absolutely. So November 19th, the book will be out. And anyone that pre-orders it gets the workbook that goes along with the book. And check out my website for all the other things that I do, podcast, the retreats, and everything else bold.
Thank you so much, Leigh. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed our journey together. Please take a moment to rate and review the show. It really helps us grow and reach others looking to slow down too. Wishing you simplicity and ease in your world, and I'll see you back here next week.